healthy sexuality, as it were, to a very unhealthy sexuality, and this is entirely serious. We can't reveal to you the details of the charges at the Benjamin Levin trial, and I want to emphasize that this monologue is not actually about the Levin case. That's just the catalyst leading to this discussion. But I do think it's very important that when we discuss child pornography, we have an idea about that which we speak. I also want to warn you that some of what I say will not be suitable for younger people. So kick them out of the room, get them to do the dishes or something useful with their time. Okay? Right. Before we go on, though, I want you to see a short interview with someone called Gerald Hannon. And let me explain. He was a teacher at Ryerson College before it was a university. Yeah, you paid his wages. He was let go in 1995 because it was revealed that he was a gay prostitute. Mind you, I really have to wonder who would have actually paid for this man's services, but I digress. He was defended by the literary establishment. You have a look and see how many. By his union CUPE, by his students. He's not a very good writer, frankly, but he's part of the in crowd. He wins awards. He writes for the Globe and Mail, where Benjamin Levin's brother, Martin, was books editor for 17 years. Toronto Life and other publications. As I say, if you Google this man, you'll be amazed how many of the Toronto elite know him, like him, and defended him. Yet this is the Gerald Hannon who criticized the police for their investigations into child pornography and said, and please listen to this, "I could never understand how children's hockey differed from an organized child sex ring. Both involve children and adults. Both involve strenuous physical activity, adult coaches taking the role of the adult lover. Both involve danger. Both involve pleasure. Yet we approve of children's hockey and deplore child sex rings." Quite. Here is a fawning interview with him when he retired from being, a hooker.
Hello, Extra viewers. My name is Sasha, and I'm here interviewing Gerald Hannon on the occasion of his retirement from the sex industry.
Exactly.
Gerald, now, I know you've said publicly that you're retiring, but I have a feeling that, like so many people who retire, maybe you'll be going into consulting work around the sex trade.
Well, I'd love to do consulting work. You know, I used to teach at Ryerson, and this all blew up in my face at Ryerson in '95. And I've often said that my only regret from that period was not having told my students what a fabulous part-time job this is for students or people who are going to be a freelancer, because it takes a very little time.
Still surprised at how high and far this excrement reaches? A few years ago, I wrote a book which included a chapter about child abuse. As it turned out, my subject, the Catholic abuse crisis, was rather different, overwhelmingly concerning the exploitation of teenage boys. But I spent time with officers, fine people from the Ontario Provincial Police and Metro Toronto, the sex crimes units, who dealt specifically with child pornography. And what I was told shocked me. So I thought I was worldly and hardened and tough and all that. Well, not at all. No way. Please remove from your mind any idea that this is, I don't know, sexy teenage-looking girls in school uniforms and they're really 18 or 19 years old anyway. No, this is children. This is sometimes newborn babies. Yeah, one of the victims was just born. These are tiny children, weeping in agony and horror as their bodies are torn and battered. These are 5-year-olds standing in a room as men on the internet tell someone in that room to do various things to them as they weep and bleed, and eventually the little body's going to trauma and shock. These are children who often, they disappear, they're killed. These are children who are kidnapped, abused, raped, never have a childhood. Incest is often involved as well. And tiny souls from the most vulnerable parts of the world are taken away and used as meat, and then they are discarded as meat as well. Here is a disturbing but fairly mild dramatization by ECPAT International concerning what child pornography really is. There are always victims. It is never a victimless crime. Nor is this something you can come upon and across accidentally when surfing the net, even frankly if you're surfing the net for hardcore adult pornography. Look, officer after officer, cop after cop stressed that they were indifferent to what consenting adults did to each other. It just wasn't their business. And they said child pornographers build so many firewalls, establish so much protection that it's simply impossible to find this filth by accident. No, it wasn't research. It wasn't an error. You were looking very hard for it. Good Lord, the cops don't even go after people who've looked through the windows of hell once or twice. They're after the long-term, long-time makers, possessors, distributors of this stuff. And when they charge, please bear this in mind, when they charge, they have solid cases and lots of evidence, usually from domestic and foreign police services. If the victims do physically survive, they seldom lead normal lives. They self-harm, they often commit suicide. It's not what the clever people are now calling intergenerational sex. It's not the breaking of barriers. It's raping babies, raping children, and the culprits should go to prison for decades. In Canada, however, with a good lawyer and a silly judge, they walk free in a year or so. Pity the children, pity us.
And I certainly have no sympathy for child molesters, but I do have some grave doubts about putting people in jail because of their taste in pictures.
That was Tom Flanagan, and do you remember how much coverage that got? He's a very influential man in conservative circles. Every single day for about a week and a half that was covered. And I think he was wrong in what he said. This is not a victimless crime. What he was really trying to get at, though, was that if you are simply looking at what someone else has produced, should you go to prison? Frankly, Tom, people don't usually go to prison for that. It's those who actually, they make, they distribute. They're part of that inner circle. It's not an accidental crime here. Simon Kent has written extremely well about this whole issue of paedophilia, and obviously the catalyst of this, or for this, is the trial of Benjamin Levin. We're not alleging that anyone is guilty of anything at this stage, but Canada is one of the central countries involved in this.
It appears, and sadly, it's such a global network too, because the internet enables this sort of thing. Yeah. The internet gives people the ability to share files and share information that would have been thought impossible 10 or 15 years ago. But don't forget, at the other side, the people who are pursuing these pedophiles and people sharing this information are using the internet to their advantage too.
Yeah, the cops, I mean, I'm critical of the cops sometimes. So the guys who work in this area, and I've met quite a few, they're amazingly normal, first of all. I mean, it's quite startling, although some have to have counselling because of what they're seeing. But generally what they will do is, once they find someone that they think is guilty, they'll go undercover, they'll pose as another paedophile, suggest things within the realms of legality, and very quickly it all becomes very, very thick and nasty.
Well, the police force that really got into this in the early 2000s was the Metropolitan Police. They set up a special bureau in the UK. Yeah, the London Met, the Met has led the way because they've set all sorts of precedents, as you explained, the methodology, how they go about this, how they go about luring these people out from under their rocks, wherever they live, and as soon as they share anything, bang, they pounce and they get them, and they get very strong support from the judiciary. They get good, strong sentences. So it's a great combination of good police work and support from the judiciary, and they're getting results. And what we're about to see play out in the Toronto court is another example, and I'm not presupposing guilt or innocence either way. Everyone has their entitlement to their day in court. But it's going to be a very interesting case because it was multi-jurisdictional. It stretched all the way down to New Zealand, which is quite extraordinary.
New Zealand, 16-hour time difference, other side of the world. They seem to think, some of these guys from previous cases, that if they're far enough away, they can get away with it. And frankly, in some countries that have a different cultural context, maybe they can. Although those countries, there are fewer and fewer all the time.
Michael, I think they're only as far away as the keyboard and the person sitting on the other side of a keyboard tracking their movements. The internet, don't forget, grants that same interconnectivity that a perpetrator would use to someone who's policing the web. And there's certain algorithms they can use when they can run on the web looking for certain words, catchphrases and codes. They can zero on these people. And look, it does sound very Big Brother, but I think that the public benefit is very well served by this because these people are being weeded out one at a time. And who would like them living in our community, let alone next door or down the street or someone you might bump into in the supermarket? And this is good policing. It's good work for the protection of everyone.
I think it is. I mean, I'm very aware and suspicious of too much state intrusion, but Again, I mentioned in my monologue, the police I've interviewed, they said, look, when it comes to adult pornography, we just couldn't care less. If you think, oh, this might be a bit risky, well, it's none of our business. You mustn't think in those terms, nor is it a 19-year-old girl pretending to be 16 in a school uniform. It isn't about, this is very, very precise and exact. And they're not looking and they find something. They're tipped off. It's a fairly small community. Another part of this is kids who survive, and often they disappear, they're killed, but kids who survive, frequently they become so twisted themselves, they may become abusers as well, so they're creating more criminals.
There is evidence of this, and often the plea is it's a victimless crime. But how can it be a victimless crime when young children are involved and young children are coerced or through whatever means to perform what awful acts they are performed, and these things are then shared, be they moving pictures or images. There are victims, and they're young children who deserve society's protection. And we have this ongoing debate in the free society we live in Canada and all the Western world about where do our rights stop and our responsibilities begin. Well, I think as a community, we all have a right and we all deserve the protection from these sorts of people. And God knows our children deserve that protection too.
Yeah.
It's an interesting case, and what will play out, as I say, in this Toronto court, not all of the evidence has been brought out so far. Not all of the evidence was brought in at the initial committal hearing. It will come out later, and it's going to be quite staggering, I think.
Yeah.
Sadly.
Oh, yes. Within, I mean, I'm loath to call it community, within this, this subsection of the population that have these attractions, when I've read some of the material, there are men who have this and they hate themselves for it, and they do all they can to make sure they never act on it. That they're from counselling to prayer circles to support groups, they know it's wrong. So those who actually do go ahead and look and do, they're even worse than the rest.
There's probably several PhD theses to be written on this, and perhaps the police who go after these perps, they're the people that talk about what sort of mindset are they looking for. They've probably got a good profile, and I know profiling, that is another a dangerous set of words as well, but they know what they're looking for, and some of the background of these people are frighteningly normal. They often have their own family or children at home. This is not reflecting on this case in Toronto, of course, but the people assume positions of authority, expect the people to respond, the young children, to their innate authority, and they act on that. But what makes them cross the line? What makes them cross the line from fantasy to acting out their impulses? I don't know, and I'm sure the police would love to know more about it. But look, they're picking them off one by one by one. All around the world, these people are being reeled in, and hopefully they're sending a message. It doesn't matter where you go, it doesn't matter what you do. If you're online, you're going to have fingerprints online, and they can act on that and chase you, which is a great thing.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Appreciate it. Thank you.
A pleasure.